What's on your radar, Briahna?
Well, Robbie, today I'm probing a question on a lot of people's minds. Is it better to build a port than confront Bibi? Is a plan for America to build a port off the question of Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid the latest Biden boondoggle? As observed in a recent Washington Post op-ed, Biden's plan to build a port in Gaza to facilitate aid deliveries has drawn considerable skepticism and even ridicule. First, although more than a quarter of Gaza's population, or about 576,000 people, are on the brink of famine, according to the United Nations, the plan to construct a temporary pier off the coast of Gaza is expected to take 2 months and may require up to 1,000 U.S. troops to construct. It's also unclear how aid delivered into Gaza by sea will be transported within Gaza to people in need, especially to the population concentrated in the southern city of Rafah, which Prime Minister Netanyahu says he plans to invade despite U.S. concerns about the humanitarian implications. And Biden saying over the weekend that invading Rafah is a red line. Meanwhile, aid workers emphasize that trucks are the most efficient and inexpensive way to deliver aid. The senior UN humanitarian and reconstruction coordinator for Gaza welcomed the pier, but stressed that air and sea is not a substitute for land. British Foreign Minister David Cameron similarly emphasized that trucks are, quote, the fastest way to get aid to those who need it in a Twitter post on Friday. Biden's policy decision highlights a disconnect between America's stated interest in providing aid and our allies' choice to block the provision of said aid, and America's choice to continue to supply weapons to that ally that are being used to cause and sustain the very humanitarian crisis we're now trying to ameliorate. The contradiction is obvious. Why is America on both sides of this humanitarian catastrophe? In a bombshell report from last week, the Washington Post revealed that Washington has approved more than 100 separate military sales to Israel since its invasion of Gaza, even as officials complain Israeli leaders have not done enough to protect civilians. Adding to the controversy, the Post reported the weapons transfers were processed without any public debate because each fell under a specific dollar amount that requires the executive branch to individually notify Congress. As former State Department official Josh Paul pointed out during a recent interview on Democracy Now!, quote, it is actually illegal to provide military assistance to a country that is restricting U.S.-funded humanitarian assistance. We know that this is the case with Israel. Earlier this month, State Department spokesman John Kirby responded to a question about the contradiction between the U.S. delivering bombs and aid at the same time by echoing what has become a familiar refrain, that Israel has the right to defend itself.
The president and the vice president, and you, for that matter, have both said that the situation with getting aid into Gaza is too difficult. The vice president said that Israel needs to allow more aid in. No excuses. What is preventing the president from communicating to the Israeli government that if they don't allow aid, we will not continue supplying weapons? Why is that not a fair trade? No aid, no bombs.
Because the president still believes that it's important for Israel to have what it needs to defend itself against a still viable Hamas threat. Maybe some people have forgotten what happened on the 7th of October, but President Biden has not.
Over 30,000 Gazans have died since October 7th as a result of aerial bombardments and direct fire from Israeli troops, a lack of medical supplies, or starvation. Israel denies limiting aid into Gaza. However, prior to October 7th, 500 aid trucks entered Gaza each day. And since October 7th, the number of trucks per day has rarely exceeded 200 and is frequently less than 100, as you can see from this chart from the Washington Post. Now, Biden's choice to build a new port rather than using one of the half dozen Israel-controlled crossings into Gaza seems to suggest an effort to avoid a direct confrontation with Israeli leadership and could contribute to perceptions that Biden is a weak president. As history professor Badr El-Saif told the Washington Post, it sends a very bad signal on U.S. leadership. It reinforces what many Arabs think, that Israel is running the show and the U.S. follows. It shouldn't be an ask of Israel, he said. It should be a command, given that the U.S. is financing the war. In addition to the political implications, there are questions about the strategic legitimacy of the plan as well. The pier will take months to construct, months during which the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is predicted to deepen, even in the event of a ceasefire. MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart was able to raise this concern with Joe Biden directly in an interview over the weekend. Let's listen.
Let's talk about the temporary pier that you announced during your State of the Union address to get supplies into Gaza. It's going to take 60 days to get that constructed. What more are you doing in the absence of cooperation from Netanyahu and a bill from Congress to get supplies into Gaza, more humanitarian aid into Gaza?
Everything we can. We're pressing Israel to open up access to the north from Israel. We're also doing airdrops. I know several people were killed with the airdrop. There's a way to avoid that in the future. We're working with our Arab friends to figure out how much we can get in. Everything, look, it's a desperate situation. Food, medicine, everything needed, badly needed, and it's needed now.
As you heard, Biden alluded to the possibility of more airdrops. However, as Biden mentioned, the airdrops themselves have come under scrutiny after at least 5 Palestinians, including 2 children, were killed when parachutes attached to the aid packages failed to open. Moreover, the lethal airdrops delivered only 36,000 meals. That's for over 2 million people. Truck capacity vastly outstrips air capacity for delivering aid, which is perhaps why Biden also alluded to the possibility of opening up road access in the north of Gaza. Note, however, that truck deliveries have not been without their problems as well. It was a truck delivery to northern Gaza that laid the basis for what has been termed the Flower Massacre that occurred on February 29th, wherein food-deprived Palestinians approaching an aid truck were fired upon by Israeli forces, resulting in the death of over 100 Gazans. Perhaps in light of that event, yesterday a journalist asked a Pentagon spokesperson whether he had received assurances from the Israelis that they would not fire upon Palestinians as they tried to retrieve foreign aid. Let's take a listen.
Have you received assurances from the Israelis that they will not fire upon Palestinians as they seek to retrieve the aid?
Look, our focus is on delivering the aid. I'm not going to speak for the Israelis.
The need for assurances is far from abstract, given corroboration by Biden yesterday that Israelis will be guarding the new port being built by the United States. Again, this raises the question of how this access point will differ from other Israel-administered access points that already exist. And the most crucial question of all, why won't Biden withhold military assistance as leverage to ensure humanitarian aid gets to the people of Gaza?
You know, I was seeing even the New York Times asking really the question you're asking here in a pretty good article about it, saying the same military, the U.S. military that is sending the weapons and bombs that Israel is using in Gaza is now also sending food and water into the besieged territory. We have made aid, relief, etc., available to people in the midst of war before, but I think it's pretty unprecedented to be simultaneously contributing military resources against the side that's being attacked and then also giving aid. And, frankly, I wonder if the American people, the extent they know about this, how they would feel about tax dollars being used to both destroy and then to destroy, starve, and kill, which you can argue, and some people argue that's necessary, and then on the other side to build, to give food, to equip. It's like it doesn't make logical sense, frankly, and I think a lot of Americans would have a problem with their tax dollars being spent to dig a hole and then fill it back up.
Yeah, that's exactly a kind of analogy that I was going to mention. It feels like we're simultaneously poking in the holes in the bottom of the boat and then paying to bail it out. We are very much on both sides of this equation, and it's not only a financial question of whether this is practicable. It's a legal question because, as the former State Department official I cited pointed out, it's actually illegal to provide military assistance to a country that's restricting U.S.-funded humanitarian assistance. So it is illegal. It is against our own laws to say we're going to continue to give military assistance when you're blocking our financial assistance. Not to mention the reality that there are trucks lined up outside of all of these checkpoints. We showed a graphic showing just how many of these Israeli-controlled checkpoints are obviously surrounding the territory of Gaza. And the logic that says, Joe Biden is holding Bibi close to him. He's his ally. He literally flew to Israel after October 7th. He has committed over and over again that he is never going to stop giving aid to Israel. Even in the Jonathan Capehart interview, where Capehart asks him, do you have a red line with Netanyahu? He says, yes, I have a red line, but I'm never immediately. I have a red line, but I'm never going to stop giving weapons aid.
Then it's not really a red line.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's been reported both ways in the media. Some people who are, I think, trying to create distance between Biden and Netanyahu because the optics are so bad are saying, look, Biden is standing up to Netanyahu, who has a red line. But other reporting is, I think, getting to the heart of the issue, which says, what does it mean to have a red line if you're never willing to enforce it?
Yeah. Whatever Netanyahu or Israel want, no questions asked, end of story, just seems contrary to what previous presidents have done, and is totally contrary, frankly, to the America First foreign policy that so many voters in both parties say that they actually want.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that goes over. I can't think of, it's terrible, obviously, but worse optics than the aid drop hitting and killing people. Just terrible stuff. Thank you so much, Briahna. More Rising right after this.